Hello friends, for today's video I wanted to go through all of the episodes from season 2 of the original Avatar The Last Airbender and do a tier ranking. What I did for the first set of episodes from season 1 is I made it so that I had to have a certain amount of episodes in each tier. Otherwise, I would probably put almost all of them in the top couple of tiers, maybe a couple a little bit lower. But I wanted to make it so that I really had to distinguish for myself the standouts, the ones that maybe aren't as strong as the standouts, and not go the easy route and put everything at the top. And then on top of that, for season 1, I only let myself put 3 episodes in the top tier so that I really had to think about which ones do I think were a cut above. And it was a little bit easier last season for me. This particular season, there were so many, so I let myself put 4 in the top, but I couldn't have more than 4. I also have to have at least 3 episodes in every tier, and there are 5 tiers total. If you need a refresher as to the episodes themselves, we'll go through those first, and then we'll do our tier ranking. And I like to start in the middle when I do tier rankings and then work my way to the extremes. That way we start with sort of middle of the road feelings and then we get to those more explosive thoughts. So a list of episodes, we have The Avatar State, The Cave of Two Lovers, Return to Amashu, The Swamp, Avatar Day, The Blind Bandit, Zuko Alone, The Library, The Chase, Bitter Work, The Desert, The Secret of the Fire Nation, The Drill, City of Walls and Secrets, Tales of Ba Sing Se, Appa's Lost Days, Lake Laogai, The Earth King, The Guru, and The Crossroads of Destiny. So jumping into it and starting with the middle tier, I had such a difficult time because it was really easy for me to decide the top ones. And then from there, I should rephrase. There were certain episodes that were absolutely at the top, and then I feel like a lot of them I was like, well, these belong like in the second tier too. But I was like, okay, no, I have to have some in the middle tier, because otherwise I would make this list 3 tiers instead of 5. So it was kind of difficult for me to distinguish what really made something go in the middle versus the second tier. So the 4 episodes, because I did end up putting 4 episodes in here, that I put in the middle tier would be The Guru, which maybe is a surprise for some people. I have yet to see people's responses and reactions at the time I'm filming this to that episode. But for me, it was helpful in having Aang learn a little bit more about his powers, but it was also leading us into a lot more interesting of an episode. I think the season finale, you're just like, oh my gosh, there's so much happening, paths converge, and I think The Guru is kind of leading up into that. And so it doesn't by any means make it bad, it just means that the more explosive aspects to that arc, you could say, are more so in the latter half, which happens to be the last episode of the season. So as a result, this one ended up in the middle tier. Lake Laogai, I think, had some really interesting things going on with Zuko's perspective. I just realized that, oh my gosh, I just realized I didn't comment at all on Jet's plotline. I filmed my thoughts of the batch of episodes, the last 5 episodes, and I totally didn't say anything about Jet. Oh my gosh. Whoops. I feel bad now. Anyway, I'll have to have a pinned comment or something. Whoops. Anywho, yeah, stuff happens with Jet. The Desert, I thought this was a great episode as far as showing Aang's rage, his anguish, these really gutting feelings that he's experiencing. You also see Katara do a fantastic job of being a leader, being there for everybody, meeting everybody's needs, and keeping the group together. I just don't know that I think that this is quite as much of a standout as some of the others. They're all so good, though, that it's really difficult for me to try and even say why some of them aren't higher up. And then I have the library. So cool. The owl spirit I thought was incredible. I thought the library itself was such an awesome setting. I think it's something so many fantasy lovers think is amazing, because so many of us just have these visuals of a magical, mystical library, and there's this hidden place in the desert. I mean, I think there's so much to it that's awesome, and it does sort of push the plot forward in a lot of ways, sort of a turning point for the season. I just don't know that it has quite the same emotional hits. Obviously, they take Appa. That's a huge emotional hit at the end. But within the episode, aside from that, I don't know if it hits quite the same way as some of the others. And then on that note, let's move on to tier 2 and tier 4. So I started tier 2 with Bitter Work. This is, if you need a refresher, where you see Iroh is teaching Zuko, and then you have Aang is learning from Toph. And I think that it's very difficult to pull off a good training sequence, training montage, but I think that it, did that really well because there was emotional value in what was happening. And then also you see these kind of parallel paths with Zuko and Aang, where they're not identical, of course, but you see, similar to how in season 1, you see these paths in the storm. I think we kind of get some glimpses of that. Plus, there's just some really hard-hitting moments for Zuko in this episode. His devastation, it's really quite great. In tier 4, moving down, and we'll kind of go back and forth, City of Walls and Secrets and the Earth King. I put both of those here. I just find some of the aspects of the Earth City, while terrifying and incredibly disturbing, the Earth King himself is so annoying to me and so stupid that I'm just like, oh my gosh, because he's just such a thorn in everyone's side. And the City of Walls and Secrets in general is kind of an aggravating episode. Not in that it's done poorly, but you watch it and you're like, oh geez, because you just want them to be able to talk to who they need to talk to, and you just want them to find Appa, and instead they're being constantly redirected to certain places, and it's so frustrating in a good way. It's just, I had to put something in the 4th tier. That's really, I feel like, what it comes down to. There is another one in this, and that would be The Secret of the Fire Nation. I just don't think these have quite the same level of depth as the others. The drill, though, is amazing, and so we're going to bump back up to the 2nd tier. The Secret of the Fire Nation and the drill, they kind of go hand in hand, but the drill is where you get these like really explosive moments. And one of the best fight scenes in the whole show, I genuinely want to go back and just rewatch that fight scene because it was so fantastic. And I mentioned this in doing my batch reviews for the episodes, that episode had no reason, that fight had no reason to be as cool as it was. But they did such a great job. It's kind of similar to what I was saying about Bitter Work, where training montages aren't normally that great, but they were like, no, we're going to have a great training montage. And the same goes for the drill. Destroying a giant drill should not have been that great, and it was. After that, we have the Cave of Two Lovers. So Sokka, poor Sokka, having to listen to them sing. I felt bad for him. Aang's plotline, Katara, Sokka, Appa being scared to be underground, all of that stuff. I thought it was fine. It wasn't my favorite thing. What really made this episode stand out for me was what you see with Zuko. And I have noted this a number of times, but it would have been so easy for the writers to have Zuko be exposed to what the Fire Nation has done and then to turn his back on the Fire Nation. And instead, he is further embracing what he seems to think is like this destiny for himself. And that he is inevitably, he's already committed bad acts, thus he has no ability to redeem himself. He might as well lean into it. I think that's the beginnings of this for him. And it's hard to watch, but I think it's really well done. So for that reason, I have this episode up high. And then the last 3, The Crossroads of Destiny, while I have conflicted feelings about this because I was sitting there like, no, about so much of what was happening, at the end of the day, I think it is a fantastic season end. And then I have the Avatar State and the Blind Bandit. The introduction of Toph is awesome. Her powers are awesome. And I do think you get a lot of depth with her character in such a short amount of time. The introduction of her and the inclusion of this new party member, I think was done really seamlessly and was fantastic. And then the Avatar State, to me, was a great way to start the season, both for Aang and for Zuko. And on top of that, I think it really set up the fact, and I noted when I was watching it, the way in which it shows how these people that are supposed to be Aang's allies maybe aren't really his allies to the fullest extent that they should be. And in a sense, that's almost foreshadowing what you get with Ba Sing Se. So I like that. Now I can look back and see that. I just think that was a great first episode of this season, and it pulled us out of the first season really nicely. It was a great transition between seasons, and I think that's hard to accomplish. Now for the extremes, my least favorites and my favorites. If you saw my batch reviews, it is no surprise that my least favorites, the return to Amashu, which apparently people, I saw some people saying that they've never seen somebody dislike that episode. I haven't enjoyed the Amashu plot lines either time. I feel bad a little bit. Boomy to me is just not, I don't find him funny. I don't find him interesting. I think they could have done more with his character. So it's just not as strong, in my opinion. And then the swamp and Avatar Day. Avatar Day was fine. I liked some of what happened in that episode, but I thought Aang's plotline was a little goofy. And then the swamp, while there's a couple of cool components, and then there is foreshadowing to the way in which Aang can kind of feel the way everything's connected. You get some of that in this, and there's cool components to bending and how there's almost a blend of bending in a sense. I still don't think it's as strong as some of the others. Again, not to say it's bad, I just don't think it's as good as the others. Now for the top ones. This was so hard to decide. I really was like, oh, do I really limit it to 3 like I did for season 1? And I was like, no, I can't do it. So Tales of Ba Sing Se, hands down, definitely belongs in this top tier, in my opinion. Incredible, artistic, compelling, emotional, devastating, funny, everything you can want, and done in a way that you wouldn't think would work by having such a short amount of time for all these different characters and so many different characters, and yet it accomplished so much. So I had to put this one up here. The chase, just seeing, man, I'm so excited for season 3 because I'm like, if we get more of our characters all ending up coming together, which I need, but there's that shot of all of them lined up against Azula, and I'm like, oh, come on, let's go. I just got so pumped about it. It was great. The fight scenes were great. The end where Zuko is worried about Iroh. There's so much about that episode that I was so invigorated while watching as a result of just how cool everything was. And also the implications of what could be. It was great. I did not want to put this one here. However, I think it deserves recognition. Appa's Lost Days. I hated this episode, but I also applaud it for making me hate it so much. Does that make sense? It was so good because of all of the work that they had done leading up to this point. The feeling of you have this missing piece, and also it's kind of like the tale that we didn't get in the Tales of Ba Sing Se. And then when you see the tale, you're like, no. Anyway, I already got emotional enough talking about this episode in the batch reviews. It was phenomenal, and even though I was so upset, I was upset because they did such a great job with it. So I think it deserves to be in the top. And then Zuko, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Zuko alone. This one was the one where I'm like, do I put this in the second tier instead of the first? I was tempted, but when I think about the backstory aspects of this, and I really examine the parallels between present day and the past, the fact that you made kind of the opposite of Tales of Ba Sing Se. Instead of being impressive in that you were able to see so many characters, you really zero in on one, and it's still really interesting and well done. It gets you further into Zuko's mind. And then when you look at what's happening in the past, I just think it's incredible. And it's hard to do flashbacks without it feeling cliche, without it feeling like they're relying on flashbacks. Instead, the flashbacks added more context to what was already an interesting character, a character that was already slowly being revealed to us a little bit more. And then the flashbacks in some ways actually created new mysteries as well and made you want to know more about other characters. So I just think it did everything that it needed to do, and it was great to be able to follow Zuko more. And that would be it for my tier ranking of the episodes from season 2. This was difficult for me. There were so many. I mean, the drill was so cool that I was like, is it top tier? And I thought that, bitter work, the devastation was so good and how it was shown and the interesting components to the magic and seeing the way these characters have to push through to learn. I was like, is this top tier? And on one hand, I think it was probably truly the top 4 that I picked were probably my top 4, but on the other hand, I'm like, why did I force myself to only put 4 in the top? But anyway, I would love to know, where do you completely agree? Where do you disagree? What are your favorites? If you could only pick 3 And then if you want, you can also pick 4 instead of 3. But if you had to pick a top 3 or a top 4 for this season, which ones would they be? If you had to bump one of mine and replace it, what would it be? And then if you had to put some at the bottom, which ones would you put? But thanks so much for watching. I can't wait to jump into season 3. I'm really nervous. I'm quite scared, but I'm also sad that it's almost over, but I'm also really excited to finally jump into it and see what happens. Thanks so much for watching though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.